Well, thank you for joining me once again on the Reasonable Theology podcast. On this episode, I'm actually joined by Josh McDowell, a name you probably know. He's the author or the co-author of over 110 books, which is pretty amazing. Those books include More Than a Carpenter and Evidence That Demands a Verdict, pretty popular selections in the apologetics bookshelves. He and his wife, Dottie, have 4 children and 7 grandchildren. And his latest book, he's co-authored with Thomas Williams, and it is called How to Know God Exists: Solid Reasons to Believe in God, Discover Truth, and Find Meaning in Your Life. Josh McDowell, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. In fact, that book is the 152nd book.
Oh my, I've got old information here.
Yeah, you do, man. You go back before Noah's Ark. No,
Wow, 152 books.
it's a lot of work. It's just a
Yeah.
lot of work. Yeah. But I think I'm not writing another book because I don't think I have another book in me.
You've exhausted the well.
Oh, I've exhausted the well. Believe me, the waters run dry. Not true. Not really. I would have 2 or 3 more books in me.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it and excited to talk about this latest one that you've got. Just in case someone hasn't come across your work before, maybe isn't as familiar, could you share a little bit about yourself and your ministry?
Well, I'm very good looking. I'm handsome. That's that's a biased approach. Um, most of my books came out of the second book I wrote called Evidence That Demands a Verdict, which my first book took 42 hours. My second book took 13 years to write. More Than a Carpenter took 42 hours. Uh, but I set out to refute Christianity and make a joke of it and ended up becoming a believer. And since then, I've written books of why I believe, is basically. Uh, I'm not the best writer in the world. People don't buy my books for the style, they buy them for the content. And I like to really hone in on the content. But with this with this new book, we're applying not just the evidence for faith in God, but what are the implications, the consequences in your life of a faith in God? Yeah. Over against secularism, naturalism, or even relativism. Uh, that all other approaches, for me, seem very shallow and indefensible. But when it comes to faith in a one triune God, it's very defensible with the evidence. But it's still a faith factor. Uh,
Yeah.
Truth takes you to the bridge, faith takes you over the bridge.
Now, with this book, I mean, being, as we said, I mean, you've written over 150 of them. Um, what kind of unique contributions are you looking to make with this? You mentioned you're really focused and laser focused in on just the evidence for God's existence. What else are you hoping to accomplish with this particular book?
Well, the greatest thing I'm hoping to accomplish is that people will see that the bankruptcy of most approaches, like secularism, naturalism, relativism, the bankruptcy of it, and see that basically a faith in a personal triune creator God is the only, and God intended it that way, that truly produces meaning in one's life. Yeah, if you're looking at meaning. And I think it's the one that satisfies the inner desires of the human soul.
Yeah, and that's one of the main things that I was, as looking through the book is seeing that the one of the main arguments that you're making is that there really is no meaning in life without the existence of God. And obviously someone from a secular worldview, particularly someone who's an agnostic or an atheist, they would deny that. Why is it the case that the existence of God is a prerequisite to have meaning in your life?
Well, you take secularism, which has taken all faith, all religion out of every subject, economics, politics, social, everything. Well, through that, you cannot discover meaning. You cannot discover purpose. You cannot discover something. How you act now will affect you in the future. And then you take Naturalism teaches that all issues are naturally explained within a natural system, and you can only find answers for anything within a naturalistic system. So I draw it's like a round world, and the only way you can know anything is within that natural system. And so there's no way for you ever to come to a belief in God or anything because that's supernatural. And the supernatural cannot, they'll say, cannot intervene in the natural. And so what you've done is you've ruled out the divine, not evidentially, not because of the facts or anything, but you've ruled it out philosophically. Uh, and then with relativism, um, all truth is relevant. There is no absolute truth. Absolute truth is defined as that which is true for all people in all places at all times. Well, with relativism, where all truth is dependent upon the culture, it's culturally originated, culturally discovered everything, then you can have no truth that is true for all people in all places at all time because it would change with every culture. And so this is why somebody say, well, who are you to judge me? You're only using your cultural truth. That's not my cultural truth. And so you leave out conversation pretty much about main issues in life. Um, so that's some of the weaknesses there. And yet that's where much of our culture today is based upon secularism, naturalism, and relativism. And we've ruled out even the possibility of the supernatural or of God, but not because of the evidence shows that, but because of the philosophical perspective.
And people need to understand that their worldview, be it naturalism or relativism or secularism, that filters down into their day to day lives and how they approach their life, doesn't it?
Yes. Uh, a while back, I was just thinking as you were talking, it was kind of like a debate with a not Christian, leading philosopher, secular philosopher. And when it came to the resurrection, he made fun of it and said, I don't believe in that. And I said, have you rejected resurrection because you've examined the evidence for the resurrection or because of your philosophical perspective? And he looked at me and he said, because of my philosophical perspective. And the evidence had nothing to do with it. Uh, so I would actually say to him, well, you have no reason, no right to criticize me or judge me because you're using your cultural truth, but I'm using my cultural truth. And how can you say your cultural truth is better or worse than mine? You can't.
Right? By their own worldview, they can't.
That's right. Yeah. So most people are disarmed right from the beginning, whether it's secularism, naturalism, or relativism.
And I certainly agree with everything you're saying. I think there are some who hold to those who would simply say, "Well, my life's not meaningless. I've got a great life. I feel like I have lots of meaning in life." How why is that the case? Are they just kind of filling themselves and distracting themselves with the things that glitter around them? How is it that tragically so many people can go and live a godless life and not at least outwardly admit to themselves that they are devoid of meaning without God?
You don't need the understanding of God and the supernatural to live. But I ask every person a question: what happens to you when you die? They'll say, well, I just die. There's nothing. So, okay,
Yeah.
you're saying you come from nothing and you go to nothing. Well, how do you find meaning in between there? Which is your foundation for meaning? Nothing.
Right.
Um, and how does the way you live now, see, as a believer and as God has revealed in the scripture, the way we believe now will have a definite effect upon our future. Wow.
Yeah.
That's where you take living very seriously. But is that true? Well, I had to first examine, um, is the Bible reliable? Can I trust the Bible as being historically accurate and true? And can I trust the Bible that what I have is what was written down 2,000 years ago? It's not been changed. And do I have the understanding and confidence that what was written down was true? That Jesus said that and Jesus did that. If what was written down wasn't true, then I could care less that what I have today is what was written down.
Right.
And so I
Yeah.
had to examine both of those and satisfy that intellectual curiosity to a high level degree of confidence, and which I did. But you still take it by faith. Um, Faith is taking you where truth cannot. Truth can take you what is true. Faith can take you to the application of that truth and seeing how it relates to your life. But I'll say to people, how can you find meaning when you come from nothing and you go to nothing?
Right.
The only meaning you can find is I'm nothing. There's no
Mm.
value to me. I'm just a concourse of atoms and molecules just put together differently than a tree or an
Yeah.
animal or a rock. And when I die, that's it.
Yeah. No, that's really helpful, helping people see beyond just their span of time that they're in right now. Where did you come from and where are you going?
But you cannot just say, well, you need a belief in God to have meaning and everything. So I believe in God. No, no, no. Has to be based upon truth. As the Bible is very clear, you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Now, in that context, the truth is Jesus Christ. So, what the Bible is saying, you shall know the truth. You shall know Jesus Christ, and Jesus will set you free. That's what Jesus meant when he said, I am the truth. I am the way, and I am the truth. Uh, and so, this is why I try to write my books and document everything so people don't have to trust me. They can check out the historical evidence for themselves. Is there a God?
Yeah, no, that's great. And you mentioned several times just the need for evidence, and that's a good thing to seek out and to find and understand the evidence for the things that we believe.
The Christian faith is an intelligent faith. It's not faith in faith, it's faith in Christ. It's faith
Right.
in the scriptures. Biblical faith goes where truth leads you. It's just that faith will take you where truth cannot take you. Truth can take me to God, faith can take me through the scriptures to understand who God is.
I know. I think it was Richard Dawkins has his definition of faith. That faith is, believing in something in spite of the evidence. That is the evidence against it, and of course that's a terrible.
Well, it's the exact opposite. It shows he's never read the scriptures, he's never studied it. Faith is the opposite of that. It's faith in where the evidence takes you.
Yeah. So there is God has given us great evidence, and there's great benefit to the evidence. And in evidence that demands a verdict, you give all these resources and helps about Scripture and Jesus and the resurrection and other key areas of the faith. How does this book differ from that approach? Not that you're not using evidence, but you look at this from a rational approach. How does this differ?
It's different this way. Uh, Instead of giving the incredible abundance evidence historically for the resurrection, the deity of Christ, etc., and for faith, I take the mind that God has given us and say that rationally, using your mind, you can come to the conclusion that God is. Um, Romans 1 talks about that and studying the universe around you, the size, the scope of it, studying the universe from within, the order of it, the intelligence of it, and everything. You can come, I think, intellectually, you could come to conclusion one, God is, and second, he's all powerful. But after that, you need revelation. Revelation takes us where the evidence won't. And if there's more to life than what our mind shows us, then God must reveal it. That's the story of Christianity. Is that there's more about God than what our minds can tell us. And God, to know that, The only way you can know that is if God reveals that to you, and that's what He has done in the Scriptures. It's exciting.
It is. It is. And so every person for all of humanity can walk outside and see a sunset and a tree and a stream, and they are without excuse in terms of the knowledge of the existence of God. Like you said, we can, with our own eyes, understand that there is a God. He's all powerful. He's creative. I'm not him. And beyond that, he's given us his word to give us the particulars to know more about him and the
In
way of
other words,
salvation.
to know anything more about Him, He must reveal it. And
Yeah.
that's what we have in the Scriptures. Yeah, good observation.
Yeah. Now, throughout your ministry, a lot of it focused on apologetics. You've been helping believers be prepared to give an answer for the hope that is within them. Now, you've been doing this for decades. Have the main
Makes me feel
challenges to
old.
Christianity have the main challenges to Christianity, the main critiques, and even the attacks, have those changed a lot over the years, or are they basically the same year in and year out, and maybe just dressed differently?
Yes and no. Yes, in a sense, in generations past, they dealt with the doctrine of the Scriptures. Is it true? Is it true that the resurrection happened? Is it true that Christ is the Son of God? Now, in this generation, it's shifted to from what are the doctrines of the doctrines true and everything to the very existence of God Himself. And that's where the shift is today. And that's where most of your questions come from. How do you know God exists? How can you tell that? How can you tell me God exists? But now, so that's the difference. But the same is this: if every generation, the past, present, and I'm sure in the future, there'll be three basic questions: who am I? Why am I here? And where am I going? Every generation has had those three questions. Who am I? That centers around your identity. Who am I? Where am I going? That centers around uh, what am I doing? It centers around your purpose. And then where am I going centers around your destiny. And those three questions and those three issues have been in every generation. And I think as believers in the church should prepare its people to answer, who am I? Why am I here? And where am I going? It's like you sit down with most people, even Christian influencers, people call them leaders and everything, and talk about something, lean over and look them in the eye and say, what's your purpose in life? It's incredible. People fall apart. They go, well, I cannot tell you how many people then say, boy, that's a difficult one. And I'm thinking, if that's difficult, boy, are you shallow if that's difficult. And so somebody shot back at me once, leaned over the coffee table, looked me in the eye and said, what's your purpose in life? Without taking a breath, I said, go to heaven, take as many people with me as I can, and enjoy every moment of it. And he goes, ah, what is your purpose in life? Uh, People who have a distinct purpose in life are usually happier people, more content, more loving, and accomplishes more in the world of positive and good change. Those who have a distinct purpose for their life. And I say everybody should have their purpose down. You're walking down the street, somebody walks up to you, looks at you, and says, what's your purpose in life? You don't even have to think about it.
Yeah, and those questions of origins and purpose and destiny and all those things, they are perennial questions. Everyone innately needs and desires an answer to them. Christianity offers the true answers for those, and at the same time, a lot of these isms are offering answers. They're fool's gold, they glitter, but they're not true answers. What are some of those answers that either secularism or naturalism or relativism offers, and how can Christians respond with the truth?
Well, for example, relativism would take you whatever they believe about who am I, why am I here, where am I going, what is life all about, they would have to say is only their truth. Because they say all truth is relative. In other words, all truth is culturally created. And so, who do you think you are? You're so arrogant and think you can take your culture and say it's better than my culture and impose it upon me. You can't. You have no basis for judging the right or wrong of my culture if all truth, so it's true, all truth is cultural. With naturalism, if it's all within a circle of the world that's naturalistic, everything that happens in life has to happen within that circle. So everything has a naturalistic cause and a naturalistic ending. There's no room for the supernatural to intervene within a naturalistic system. And so they will say, basically, they'd have to say to you, do whatever is natural to you. But we have to understand that the natural universe can be intervened by the supernatural, and that there is a standard above our standard. There are absolutes. There are things that are true for all people in all places at all times. Um, and so, what I say to pastors, you really have to help your people answer those three questions: who am I? Why am I here? And where am I going? Who am I? My identity. Where am I what am I doing? My purpose. Where am I going? My destiny. We must help believers. Parents must help their children answer those questions. That's why, with raising my three daughters and son, almost every dinner, not lunch or breakfast, but every dinner we had, I thought through ahead of time. Now, what question are we going to discuss today? Okay, let's discuss who am I? Let's discuss our identity. And so we would discuss that for dinner. And I would say to my children, how do you know that's true about you? Etc. And then another dinner, we'd have another question, maybe, why are we here? Why are we here as a family? What's our purpose as a family? And then discuss it. Uh, and then I always love to ask, is there any such thing as absolute truth, that which is true for all people in all places at all times? And so I think parents have a tremendous responsibility to interact with their children on these issues of existence, of being, of meaning, uh, because otherwise they're going to learn it from their friends or at school. And a lot of things they learn at school when it comes to meaning, purpose, etc., I do not agree with. And so that's why I write as many books as I can.
When you think of how our world approaches these important questions, they really seem to pit faith and reason against one another. Now, clearly, your view is that that's not necessary. That's not the case. Why is it not the case that faith and reason are actually opposed to one another? Why is it that faith and reason are essential to use together?
Because reason can only reveal so much to you. It can basically only reveal to you truth about the naturalistic world. It can't reveal to you truth about the supernatural. What comes after this life? Does the way we behave in this life affect our future? And the big resounding answer is yes. But to understand that, you need revelation. Revelation takes us to where truth cannot. It's kind of where truth brings you to the bridge, faith takes you over the bridge. Faith is active on the truth that you know. Um, J.P. Moreland, who's a professor of philosophy at Biola University, Talbot Seminary, he says this: faith is a trust in what we have reason to believe is true. Wow. Faith is a trust in what our reason has shown us to be true.
That's a really helpful definition.
Yeah.
That is good. What would you say? What advice would you have for the Christian who wants to speak into various issues from a Christian worldview, but they're intimidated by those conversations? Either they feel the other person's going to know more than them, and they won't be able to articulate things. Maybe they're
I would tell
intimidated
him
just by
this:
pressure.
do your homework, find the answers, or go sell used cars.
Yeah.
If you don't have time to do your homework and to examine these questions and find out that as much as you can, the objective truth factors about it, then go sell used cars.
And there's lots of places they can go
To
to do
sell
their
used
homework.
cars.
There's plenty of play. Well, the used car market right now is pretty hot. They'd be pretty lucrative. But what are some places that the believer can go? Obviously, you've got a tremendous a number of books. What are some ways they can do their homework?
You just had a grasp of the obvious. I I tell people, people say to me, authors do you promote your books? And I said, yes, I'm not ashamed of what I wrote. I've written and researched on everything I can to help people to know why they believe what they believe. And and I say, why are you ashamed of what you wrote? Well, no, but I feel self-conscious promoting my books. I said, look, I spent my entire life, night and day, 24/7, studying just to be able to learn truth, to pass that on to my children, to my friends, to others, to non believers, to believers. And so I don't hesitate to promote my books. Uh, but there's a lot of good books out there. Oh my gosh, you take J.P. Moreland or, oh, what's his name? What's that? Oh, Lee Strobel. That
Sure.
guy
Yep.
is pathetic, pathetically good. Lee Strobel, I thank God he's a Christian. I,
Yeah.
I, I really do. But he's helped so many people with his books.
Yep.
And I hope I have too. And if you ever
Oh,
read my
certainly.
books, everything is documented. So I want people to have confidence in what I write, that they don't have to believe me. I give them documentation where they can go check it out for themselves. Be ready always, give an answer for the hope that is in you. What that means, somebody says, why do you believe in Jesus Christ? Give an intelligent answer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you be prepared to do so, and that preparation takes some work, takes
Oh,
some
and so
homework,
many
like you
people
said.
say, well, that's what I've always been taught. Well, that's what my parents taught me. That's what my
Right.
church taught me. Nothing is true because your parents taught you. Nothing is true because your church taught you. Truth comes
Yeah.
from the scriptures ultimately on life. So do your homework.
Absolutely. Now, sometimes things can look pretty bleak with where our society is, where it seems to be headed. As we wrap up our conversation, what reasons do you see right now for some hope and some optimism about the continued effectiveness of evangelism and apologetics, even in our culture today?
One, history. The church has always risen to the occasion. It has. I don't care what it is. The church comes out on top. God protects his church. Second, I have confidence there's a lot of believers out there who are taking time to know why they believe, not just what they believe, but why they believe it. I have confidence in that. And I think this younger generation coming up is just as sharp, just as smart, just as uh, biblically oriented as any other generation of young believers coming along. And the church, through its people, will rise up to the occasion. Plus, I believe in our pastors. I think the most difficult job in the world is being a pastor. You got to be all things to all people. That's the second hardest job in the world. The number one hardest job in the world is being a pastor's wife. you know,
Yep.
you you got to again be everything to all people at all time and take criticism like nobody else has to take it when you're a
Yep.
pastor's wife. But
Yeah.
I believe the church will rise up to every challenge there is. And to every challenge that will ever come up, there is an answer for it. You just got to find it. And
Yeah.
that's one thing I love to do. I love to research difficult questions because when you find the answer, your faith grows so much more than it does through easy questions.
Absolutely. In this book, one more tool in the toolbox for people to use. Where can folks go to learn more about your ministry and check out all of the things you wrote?
Well, you can go to josh.org That's my website. That's simple to remember, josh.org.
Wow, you got that one early in the game to get such a short domain
I
name.
did. I said to my staff, go and get everything you can with the name Josh in it.
That was a wise move.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. Just letting listeners know that any of the resources, the other books we mentioned, links to Josh's website, all that'll be on the show notes. You can check that out at reasonabletheology.org/Josh, keeping it simple, and you can check those out. Our guest has been Josh McDowell talking about his latest book. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
Well, I just appreciate you take the time to interview me. I mean, that's humbling, my friend. You have a good day.